provider, offering slightly better coverage at considerably less expense. So it's all good. And Vince, now it's all yours. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, District Governor Kurt. So for those that I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, my name is Vince Fabric. I'm the treasurer for District 5360. And part of our responsibilities with diligence every single year is to review the insurance plan as part of our risk strategy, risk mitigation, and diligence. So we've done that. And tonight we have the absolute privilege of having Jody Swanson from Hub International to join us, who has graciously donated her time to go and make the presentation, as well as I'm sure she's going to address any questions that may come up. So with that, thank you all for taking your valuable time and joining us tonight. And with that, Jody, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for leading us tonight.
Well, good evening, District 5360. Yes, Jody Swanson here from Hub International, and as part of our services to the district and other districts and Rotary clubs across Canada, I'm happy to do an evening session with you for information and answer any questions that you may have on the insurance. I will introduce myself early on here. I am currently with Hub International Insurance Brokers. We do global placements in Canada and the United States, and we do place a lot of Rotary districts, and I've also have done nonprofit commercial insurance for over 19 years. I am also a Rotarian with 5370 up here in St. Albert, also a past president of the Rotary Club of St. Albert, and I'm also the current chair for our learning and development with 5370. And I participate and love Rotary, and I love Rotarians, and it's my absolute pleasure to help out Rotarians as much as I possibly can in being your personal advisor for any questions that Rotarians have, for activities that you're doing, insurance coverages, and the like. And I will also tell you a disclaimer, I am not the account executive on any of the Rotary accounts because I don't want to have any kind of a conflict of interest. So we do have an account executive, Shalina Bahanje. She is fantastic. She's very on top of things. She's looked at everything. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but she's also available for any kind of questions that you do have. And I will screen share to start so that you guys can have some kind of visuals so you don't have to look at my face all night because that will be boring. Here we are. Okay, so here with Hub International, understanding your nonprofit organizational insurance. I'm not an insurance geek. I'm also a Rotary geek. So feel free. There's no unsaid questions or answers that can't be looked at. And no question is a silly question. So it's all about you guys tonight. So go ahead and ask questions as you need. So hi, we're Hub. We're different. We look at things and we find the best solutions for you. Our whole mandate is advocacy. So we're your advocate here at Hub International Insurance. We do tailored insurance. This is not a unique program. It is through Markel Insurance, but also with Hub, we look at what your unique needs are and we find the right fit for you. And we want to give you peace of mind. You're not insurance professionals. That's our job. So who are we? We advise businesses and individuals on how to reach their goals. I know as a Rotarian that every fundraising dollar and every hour that we put into raising those funds is extremely important. So if we can save you, a couple of hundreds of dollars, that's just a few hours, extra hours that you don't have to fundraise because we put those those dollars back into your pocket. But we also recognize that we're not going to cut corners. We're not going to diminish coverage in order to save you a couple of dollars. Our whole mandate is to give you the best coverage, enhanced coverage, and try to do it as most economically as we can for all of our nonprofits. We want you to be ready for tomorrow because we're Rotarians. We look at the future and we make sure we get things done. Hub is also a very large commercial-based insurance brokerage. Yes, we also do personal lines. You can see there that we do a lot of employee benefits and retirement. We do personal lines. We do some wholesale stuff. But for the majority of it, 58 or 48% of what we do is commercial lines. This is what we do. This is what we excel at. And being a nonprofit, you are in our commercial lines area that we look at. We're also a large global leader. We are the 5th largest insurance brokerage in the world. Yes, we're large, but we also have a lot of smaller hubs, and that's why we're called hubs, because we have unique areas where we can specialize our coverages for you. In Canada, we're probably the 2nd or 3rd largest here in Canada. I mean, a lot of that is just a bunch of stuff to make us look good. But I mean, at the end of the day, Hub has what you need in order to get the job done. And we do have a Hub advantage where we do secure the most favorable terms for you. We're open and honest about how we're paid. And I did say how I'm not your account executive, Shalina is. I don't want a conflict of interest in there. We can also show and share how we are compensated by the insurance companies. They pay us, not you. You get to make the ultimate decisions. We don't make any decisions or make any orders until you direct us from the district. And of course, we comply with all of the laws in every jurisdiction here in Canada. And I will advise you that myself, I'm licensed across Canada, including Ontario West and the territories. So we never have an area where you're not being advised by a licensed broker in your district areas, including BC, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So insurance coverage, that's why we're here. Let's make it fun, fast, and easy. What have you got? We did switch over to Markel Insurance November 1st. It is on a prorated amount to expire on July 1st, the Rotary International year end. That way you can budget appropriately to say, okay, this is what we're going to pay for the year. And each of the clubs can be invoiced on what they cost. We do have the full policy premium, and then it is prorated and divided out based on the club membership amount. So a club that has 15 or 20 members is going to pay a per member rate versus the same as a club that might have 50 or 60 or 100 members in there as well. Just as a snapshot, this is also available. I've been told that your office will put this on the district website of the coverage that you have. Nothing has been reduced. You still have your 10 million commercial general liability, includes completed operations, advertising injury, non-owned auto, 2 million tenants legal liability. So that's for your rented and leased premises, including the district office. You get $75,000 damage for non-owned or rented autos. So if you have to fly into Toronto for learning to lead, zone leadership, and you need to rent an auto, you are covered for up to $75,000 for physical damage. And you also have your non-owned auto coverage that will go up to 2 million and 5 million coverage as well. There's voluntary medical payments of $50,000. So you are hosting a Rotary event and you have someone that slips and falls. You do have voluntary medical payments that you can help them with, ambulance coverages, crutches, whatever you want, up to that $50,000 so that they don't sue you individually. There is a Markel Care Extension package, or sorry, I missed the employer's liability. That's on there as well. If you have any employees at the district level, It covers them up to $2 million for any coverages for the employees. And the Markel Extension Care Package, that is also, I've been told, available on the website. And it's basically a package that just shows you all of their extensions and extra coverages that they have. Also important, $3 million worth of abuse coverage. It does cover the youth. It covers their youth camps as well. You just have to be certain that you are getting the vulnerable sector checks done. That's just due diligence. Every Rotarian should have a vulnerable sector check done every 3 years. If you're having pushback or you're having some issues with that, do let them know that insurance is contingent on that, that if they are involved with a youth or vulnerable person abuse claim, if they haven't gotten their vulnerable sector check, they could potentially, not guarantee, but they could potentially be on their own for any kind of lawsuits, litigation, or legal defense costs. That's important. Make sure you're getting your vulnerable sector checks. All Rotarians, every 3 years. You might want to have a spreadsheet or someone monitoring that just to make sure it is happening. There is full coverage for every Rotarian member as long as they are getting those vulnerable sector checks done. 5 million directors and officers coverage, more so on your district, but also at a club level for any of the executive or directors that are making decisions with how money or funds are spent. You never know when someone's going to come back and say, hey, we didn't authorize that $100,000, money transfer or grant transfer or whichever. But you do have the 5 million of the directors and officers coverage. Deductible, $2,500. If you have a property claim, if you have an advertising injury claim, if you're being sued for copyright infringement, anything like that, your deductible is $2,500. It was a bit higher previously, so this is a bit lower, so it's an advantage. Just be aware of that. If someone is giving you if they're serving you a notice for copyright claim and it's a $1,500 claim, that's not something that we would put through on the insurance simply because the deductible is $2,500. Oops, sorry. We do have a legal expense coverage on there. So if you need to call for legal advice, to find out, like, should you be answering these claims or notices or lawsuits that you've been served, or maybe there's a potential claim on the horizon, but you're not sure, you have 24/7 coverage to call the legal expense line. There's no deductible, and it's up to $100,000 for each claim and $1 million aggregate. Aggregate just means total amount. So you get $100,000 times 10 for the year. Contents, we do have $25,000 property coverage limit, which is what you had previously. It covers all of the 45 location clubs, contents of every description. So it can be floats or risers or chairs or tables, podiums, whatever you've got there. You've got up to $25,000 coverage. There is sewer backup. The deductible is $10K. That's the lowest that Markel can offer. We don't, you didn't have sewer backup coverage previously. This is an additional coverage that they offered. And there's no earthquake or flood simply because the deductibles are higher than $25,000, which is what your property limit is. You didn't have that coverage previously either. Business interruption is $100 extra expense. So that would be if you need to set up let's say your venue that you're renting burns down and you need to get another one. You've got $100,000 to play with to set up a new office, pay lease, utilities, etc. Crime, there is $100,000 of employee and volunteer dishonesty. This does not cover subcontractors. Subcontractors are their own separate entity and would need to get their own insurance coverage. And if any Rotary clubs or district, if you are hiring subcontractors, you do want to make sure that they do have their own insurance coverage and that they've added either the district or the club as an additional named insured in respect to the work that they're providing on behalf of them. There is $25,000 worth of computer theft and funds transfer fraud, 10,000 money orders, counterfeit currency, that's actual paper, telephone fraud, unauthorized credit card use, and there is a little throw in there for $5,000 for social engineering. This covers the district and all clubs. It's kind of a throw in. It's not a ton of coverage, especially if you're doing any kind of fundraising or if you're transferring funds more than $25,000. Let's say you're holding a gala and you're going to fundraise like $100,000 you're hoping for. Then you might want to start looking at getting your own cyber data theft funds transfers kind of coverage. Another extra add-in extension or improvement, I guess, is that there's no exclusion on liquor liability or rib fests. The prior policy did have a liquor liability exclusion. So every time you wanted to have an event where you were either serving liquor or you were selling liquor, it was excluded 100%. And so you'd have to apply to that insurance company and get special permission. You'd have to get a certificate. You don't need to do that anymore. This has full liquor liability. Markel 100% understands how Rotarians operate and the things that we do, and that we're going to have liquor at maybe a board meeting, or we're going to have people over at each other's houses and for, you know, maybe a committee meeting and have some liquor or refreshments. That's fine. You're covered. Rib fests are covered. Youth camps, again, are also included along with most sporting events. Previously, youth camps and youth events were not covered. You'd have to get separate insurance and get a policy, a short-term policy, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. You don't need to do that anymore. Youth camps, overnight camps, youth activities are covered. Most sporting events are covered. If you're going to do crazy things like skydiving or parachuting, yeah, high-risk sports, not covered. Skiing, tobogganing, all those kinds of things, yes, those things are covered. Any events under 1,000 attendees, automatically covered. If they're over 1,000 attendees and you are responsible for the liability, like from a city or a town perspective, give us a shout. We'll just look at it, make sure it's all kosher with Markel. And we can do that on an individual basis. I mean, if you're doing something over $1,000 or 1,000 participants, that's something we should probably look at for sure. Fireworks, firearms, and terrorism are excluded. If you want to take out some youth exchange students on a hunting excursion, not covered, something like that, just because there's firearms involved in that. And that is mainly because there are provincial and federal licensing laws that you have to follow in order for that to happen. Same thing with fireworks. You have to have a provincial license to do fireworks. So those kinds of things, if they're provincially or federally licensed and mandated, those things would typically be excluded until we can ascertain that you've followed all the rules there.
Excuse me, Jody, we've had a couple of questions that it'd be great to address them now since you're on a really good roll. The first one is describe a rib fest. I've got a couple more follow-ups, but let's just deal with one at a time. So what do you define as a rib fest?
So a rib fest, from what the insurance company is looking at, we did previously send in a list of kind of activities that Rotarians do. Markel also insures many other districts besides 5360, and most of them do rib fests. So they have a kind of an understanding of what rib fests are. Rib fests could be for a gathering where you have invited food trucks, ribbers, to come in on usually city-owned property, can be other property, and you sell tickets ahead of time for people to come in and purchase food from these food trucks. And the food trucks provide either a dollar per sale or a percentage of the proceeds as a donation as part of the fundraiser. So they can, usually it's on city property. Sometimes you can have what do you call it? I want to say beer, or like a beer tent or something like that on there. Again, city property. And again, the liquor liability would extend to that as long as we're under the 1,000 attendees. If it's over 1,000 attendees, where some RibFest very well could be, where you're getting a lot of a particular city or municipality coming in, and you might have 5,000 or 6,000 people coming through. And again, if you don't have more than 1,000 people at any one time on the site, again, you're still under that $1,000 participant coverage. But if you're over that, then of course, we're just going to take a look at it, and we'll just ask some extra questions to see, do you have your liquor license? Do you have ProServe on there? Again, provincially regulated and licensed activity to sell liquor, those kinds of things. And as long as we check all the boxes and we've done our due diligence, we're fine to go. But for the most part, the RibFest, if you have people coming and going through and no more than 1,000 people at any one given time on site, then you're fallen under that $1,000 attendees on site. But the RibFest basically, it's a fundraiser. Fundraisers are covered here. You're being paid by the ribbers and the food trucks for a portion of the sales, and so you're good. I do know that they would like to ensure that all of the ribbers have followed their due diligence, make sure that they have insurance, that they have their Alberta Health Services and food handling permits. I know when they come on site, they do get checked by AHS. And sometimes, if they don't have running water, or if they don't have their insurance in place, or if they don't have their food handling permit in place, they'll have to get that all set up with AHS before they can proceed. So most of that kind of liability exposure is not part of Rotary. It's all handled by the municipality and by the province in order for them to proceed. So it's kind of nice because we don't really have to deal with that. That's on the ribbers.
Thank you so much. You've handled that very, very well. One more question, and this is, I know it's really important to a number of the Rotarians present. Where do things like climbing walls and zip lines fall at youth camps?
Zip lines and climbing walls, from where I have watched on our exclusions, I don't see it on any named exclusion. I know at one point, zip lines, climbing walls, tobogganing, skiing, all that kind of stuff was manuscript written as exclusions into the policy. If it's not manuscript written into the policy as being excluded, it's covered. Now, remember, that's not participant injury coverage. That's just for liability for lawsuits if the district or the club gets sued for, maybe they didn't provide proper supervision, or they didn't provide appropriate ratio of supervisors to participants, that kind of thing, and they want to sue for things like that. That's where the coverage would fall into place. Where there is not coverage is accident injury. That's not a commercial general liability policy. That's a life and accident injury policy. Most of our incoming exchange students have their own accident injury through their travel insurance. And again, for you yourself personally and your own exchange students, maybe outbound, for example, they should have their own personal accident injury life insurance policies. Even like for my own family, we have our own accident injury policy. If they break a bone, That's up to our own personal family. If I want my own family to be covered for a broken bone, or maybe I don't have employee benefits to cover that. Maybe I want extra coverage. Maybe I want supplementary bodily injury, break a bone coverage for things like that. That's 100% on participants to decide if they want that kind of coverage. Now, if the district wants to look at that, we could, but it'll probably be pricey. And that's not something that I think every Rotarian or every club wants to share the cost on, versus individuals who want their own personal break a bone coverage, right? That's something that every person has to decide, what do I want to cover? What do I don't want to cover? I mean, right now, healthcare in Alberta is covered. It's covered across Canada. If I go rock climbing and I fall and I break my leg and I need an ambulance to take me to the hospital and have a doctor look at me and cover me and get a cast on, that's covered by Alberta Health Services. We're automatically covered, right? Things like maybe extra coverages like ambulance might be covered under employee benefits that you have for extension, or maybe you have your own healthcare program where you're covering yourself for that. But this is a commercial general liability and property coverage. It covers you if you get served for being negligent on something. It's not going to cover participant bodily injury for a broken bone. That is something that general healthcare services will cover you for. But anything extra above that, if you're out of commission for work or school or whatever, that's something that is a separate accident injury policy that you are more than welcome to take a look at and get coverage for sure. I did see a hand up there. I think it was Brian.
Yeah, it's Brian Gentles. Go ahead, Brian. And then I think Dagmar had a question as well. But first, let's go with Brian.
Well, actually, I think Dagmar and I are on the same path here, so I'm going to let Dagmar take the lead.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, so we do have students at our camp. We have 60 kids that come, and I can guarantee you that there will be some families there that will not have third-party benefits coverage if there is an injury and so forth. And so we really do want to have that extra coverage, at least 25 grand for those instances if there was something that was to, be an injury, that they actually have coverage for any incidentals and that they don't come back and come for us. So who do I then call to get a quote for that? Because we're trying to create our budget now, and I'd like to get an idea roughly how much that might be, if we're talking $500 or if we're talking $1,000 or whatever it might be. But you might want to know more of our information so that we can go get a quote for that. So who should I call to get a quote for that coverage?
For sure. You can reach out to me and I will put you in touch with our accident benefits pros here at Hub. And they can look at maybe doing like a group for you or on an individual basis based on the number of members in the club. And then maybe they can, that way they can design a program where it's like more of a group rate for you. We can do something like that. And do know that you do have $50,000 of voluntary medical payments, and that's for Rotarians, volunteers, spouses, dependents, and that kind of thing on there as well. So that's kind of a cushion that if something does happen and you have some options to pay out some voluntary medical payments. But again, I stress, this is not an accident injury policy. Completely different form. It's like auto insurance. It's like home insurance. If something, you have a Rotarian thing at somebody's home and they don't have house insurance. Well, they should have house insurance. You should have accident injury insurance if you want extra coverage for things like that. And we can definitely look at that and help you out in those areas. But again, I want to stress that this district policy is not an accident injury for members and their children. This is, or dependents. This is, it's for third-party bodily injury in the sense of litigation. If you're negligent, you
and then
a bouncy house that you shouldn't have and didn't supervise it and people were injured or whatever. That's where this would kick in. It's not for broken bones, hospital visits, ambulance coverage. Completely different.
And let's be clear, we never had this kind of coverage to begin with.
No.
So this is a completely different type of topic. So you know, not to say that I know you're probably referring to RILA, just for example. And you know, we basically have Rotarians covered, but you know, we have to draw the line somewhere.
Right.
And if
Yeah,
you're
no,
looking at
we understand
something
that.
different, if you're looking at something different, by all means, I know that Jody can help you out. So very, very
Perfect.
great question. Thank you for that.
I have another follow-up question. In regards to, we always have a medic at our camp. And so if we have someone there that's there full-time 24/7 while the camp is ongoing, does our insurance that we have now, are there any criteria about the level of medic that we have? We don't have easy access. We're not within a half hour of an ambulance service. So is there anything in the policy that says, okay, because we're that far away that we require you to have, you know, somebody with credentials X, Y, and Z? Is there anything like that? I know that's kind of a specific question, so maybe we can take that offline and we can, like, running out of our half-hour time allotment here. But I was kind of having a question on what kind of criteria of a medic do we have? And is there anything in the insurance policy that requires us to have a certain, like, say we need registered nurses or we need X?
Nothing in the insurance policy that requires you to have a specified medic or an RN or a paramedic or anything else like that. That's just on the district and the club and your activities that you're doing your due diligence to have that. And that's just an added extra plus. If anything, the insurance company would be happy knowing that you are putting extra professionals out there that, you know, will be on standby in case something does happen, because what you're doing is you're mitigating further injury or risk. And that's what insurance companies love. Mitigate.
Right.
So you're good there.
And then in regards then, the other situation that we have is that we take kids in our personal vehicles into the town where we're near to go shopping, and it's part of the camp that we do because we're an entrepreneurship camp, and so we got to go buy supplies for them so that they can build stuff and sell stuff. And so the question then is regarding coverage. I know that you said we have some voluntary Rotarian coverage, so are we covered for having, because we're all, you know, most of the people that then drive the kids and are Rotarians, would we be covered underneath for our personal insurance? I don't know if there's muddy waters there. So we'd like to know if we need additional assurance for when we have these kids in our cars and say something happens, we get an accident or something like that, then are we covered for having youth in our vehicles, in our own personal vehicles, because we don't rent vehicles.
Yes. So that's what non-owned auto coverage on the policy covers you for. So if you are using your own personal vehicles for Rotary business, including driving kids around, there is coverage there. They will check and ask you to go to your personal your auto insurance first, because you do have something on there called accident benefits, which covers any kind of accident injury to the driver and the passengers in your own personal vehicle. And so they do ask that you go through your own personal auto first, and then they will top up and cover you for anything excess or anything that your own insurance won't cover you under the non-owned auto on the commercial liability policy. It's just the line of the way things go. I mean, it's the same thing. I have you know, I always put non-owned auto on all my commercial clients because it's a contingency coverage. If your personal auto is not going to cover it, then this will, and that way you'll definitely have the coverage. I'll have to double check. I didn't put the limit on here. I think it's 2 million. I'll have to, I do have the policy here with Markel, and I'll double check, but I think the non-owned auto does top up to 2 million for you. And that would cover, you know, drivers, your passengers and such as well. Just remember, if you're a Rotarian and you're driving an exchange student or a youth participant, please have your vulnerable sector checks done. Because I did see a question in here about the vulnerable sector check. Is now being limited to Rotarians directly involved in these programs, as the Calgary Police Force is restricting general checks. I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm not sure which Calgary police office you went into and they told you that. But if you have if you are a Rotarian or someone that's working with the district youth, for example, and you have the general letter from the 5360 office, and it states that you are required to have a vulnerable sector check because you are volunteering, then absolutely you can get that vulnerable sector check. Again, if you have a exchange student that is coming to a club meeting, you have to have a vulnerable sector check to attend your Rotary meeting. If you are having a club event, a rib fest, and you have a vulnerable person volunteering there, you need to have your vulnerable sector check. It's not just about driving vulnerable people in your own personal vehicle. It's about attending events where there are vulnerable people in attendance. You need your vulnerable sector check. So if you have someone who is not getting them done and they're driving kids, that's an issue. If you have someone who's not got their vulnerable sector check and they're attending meetings, that's an issue. So wherever your vulnerable people are, your youth are attending, everyone that's attending that event has to have their VSC done as well. So when I say that there is non-owned auto coverage, there is for driving your own vehicles. Just be sure with that abuse coverage that goes hand in hand with that, that those people have their vulnerable sector checks done.
Jody,
Yeah, at our camp we all do, so we're covered for that. Yeah.
Jody, some of our volunteers are not Rotarians. Adult volunteers, not Rotarians, fulfilling all of the same roles that Rotarians do. And a lot of our campers are not Rotarian families. So how does that play?
Need a vulnerable sector check.
And
they are volunteers. They're covered under the policy, the Markel insurance. So Rotarians and volunteers are covered.
Okay.
But they won't be covered for any kind of abuse charges or liability charges if they don't have their vulnerable sector check done. And it's
no, we're good on that. We're tight on that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Then you're good. I saw another question here. Again, if we have over 1,000 attendees at our art sale spread over 2 days, again, at any one time, is there over 1,000 people? Over 2 days, you're clicking how many people have come. You've got 1,001 people. But at any one given time, does the venue only hold 250? Is there only 250 people on the grounds at any one given time? You're good. You're covered. Again, the 1,000 attendee threshold is at any one given time, not the total from start to finish. If you're having more than 1,000 feet on the ground at any one time, give us a shout. We'll notify Markel. They'll just note the policy and you'll be fine unless you're doing something crazy like, I don't know, a rave or something crazy. Then we might have an issue and we might need some extra insurance. But other than that, if you don't have more than 1,000 people at any one given time, you're good to go. Hockey skills competitions covered. Volunteers covered on those hockey skills competitions. Youth camps are covered. Lobster fests are covered. Rotarians and volunteers at Lobster Fest are covered. Just make sure if you're serving alcohol, they have ProServe. And sorry, let me clarify. If you are selling liquor tickets, like $2 a drink or whatever to cover your cost, just make sure somebody has ProServe there. Cooking covered. The prior policy only had 3 million of abuse coverage, FYI. That's all. They didn't have 5. We could quote the 5 million abuse if you want. It will be additional premium, but the previous coverage was 3 million. That's a district thing that you guys on your I guess your like your risk committee or finance committee can look into. And I did look at the prior liquor policy review, and there was a liquor exclusion on the previous policy with cooperators. It was worded funny. It was worded that it was covered, but then when I went through the exclusions in the fine print on like page 102 or whatever, there was an exclusion on there. So they added it, but then they excluded it. So it was worded funny. I don't like that kind of stuff, because then you have a gray area where you're not sure if you're covered or not. This one doesn't have a gray area. It's included unless we're going over 1,000 people, then we need to look at it. Again, that's true, Vince. There is not an aggregate on here. It's 10 million, no aggregate, which means you can have a 10 million claim, a 10 million claim, a 10 million claim, no aggregate. It doesn't bottom out at 10 million. The previous policy did have an aggregate at, you have 10 million coverage with a 10 million aggregate. This does not have an aggregate. So
Good.
bonus, huge
Yeah.
bonus. That's huge. I can't stress how big that is. 99% of the policies have an aggregate because they want to bottom out. They don't want to pay $100 million forever. This one doesn't have an aggregate, so it's huge.
Yeah, I think you've covered all the.
I think I got them all.
questions.
I think I got
Thank
them
you.
all.
Well done,
Any
Jody.
other ones before we move on? And you will have a copy of this. You can have a copy of the. I've already sent this slide to the district office, so they do have a copy of it. If it's up to you whether you want to put it up or not, it's completely up to you. All right. Another thing I just wanted to bring to mention is that cyber and data breach coverage, even on the prior policy, was for the district only. I went through the wordings to double check. I had 3 other people, and I had our cyber pros at Hub to take a look at it as well. Cyber and data breach is location specific. They underwrite it based on how are you protecting data? Do you have multi-factor authentication or even a 2-factor authentication? How are you protecting stuff? How are you doing e-transfers? How are you moving money around? How is your treasurer or person who's dispersing funds being monitored? Things like that. It's location specific. There is, as I mentioned before here, there is some cyber coverage, data coverage in here. There's the crime. There's 25K of computer theft and funds transfer, 10K of money orders, telephone fraud, unauthorized credit card use, and 5K for social engineering. Those are those phishing emails where they say, hey, click on this link. Don't click on links, please. You do have some coverage here that's automatically covered under the district policy for all of the clubs. But if you're doing something a little bit bigger, like a fundraiser, or you're transferring more than 25K of funds, you might want to take a look at your own cyber and data breach policy. The district does have their own coverage here. They have $1 million policy. I will tell you that you can get a $250,000 policy for around $250. You want a $500,000 policy, it's around $500. So just keep that in mind for if you're trying to figure out, do I need cyber and data breach? If you're transferring more than 25K, if you're holding a fundraiser online auction for more than 25K where somebody could come and hijack and take that more than 25K, yeah, take a look at it. They're not expensive. And these have, I don't know if you can read all this, but there is a crap load of extra coverage and extensions and coverage, ransomware, cyber extortion, you know, like stuff like that, where if you're dealing with more than 25K online, maybe something to look at. Again, you can reach out to me. I'll send it over to our cyber team and they can quote it out for you. Again, if you're looking for price points, if you want a $0.25 mil, it's about $250. If you want a $0.5 mil, it's about $500. And I'm not going to really point this out, but you can kind of see the district is getting $1 million for about 1,000 and change for coverage. And I don't like to point out what the district is paying, but I know you have questions of, hey, our club, maybe we need this. How much should we get and how much is it going to cost? That's where that's there. Again, it's in the slide. You can take a look at it. I know Tammy had a question here backing up again to the abuse coverage, looking at time. If you want to reach out to us again, there was an aggregate on the abuse coverage. And again, it was at 3 per event, and 5 million for the annual year. I'll double check and see what you had previously, but again, we have the 3 million. There was an aggregate previously as well. If you want to look at a 5 million aggregate, we can look at that for you. For sure, we can definitely look at that. Again, if you have venues, you're leasing a space, you have an activity, you have a fundraiser, you may or may not be asked to provide a certificate. You may be asked to just provide proof that you have insurance. There is a general certificate showing proof of insurance, from what I've been told, on the Rotary website, the district website. And maybe that will suffice. You can send that over to your venue, your activity, your fundraiser, and see if they'll accept that. If they want to be added as an additional insured on the policy with a 30-day cancellation notice, for example, we can do up a certificate for you. Those can take a couple of days to get them. So make sure that if you have an event coming up, check with them, see if the general certificate will suffice. If it doesn't, we can definitely do up a certificate for you. There is a form on the district website. You have to log in to access it because we don't want this going out to general public people surfing the web. We just need which club is requesting it, your mailing address and postal code, the contact person, who should we be sending the certificate to, phone number and email of this person for the contact so we know how to get the certificate to you, the name of the event, the date, and the number of attendees. Again, that's just to check and see if it's over $1,000 at any one time, then we'll just go to Markel and advise them of the event. The full name and address of that event, because sometimes that is different than your club event and club address, and the organization or the company requesting that certificate. Because if they want to be named on there, we have to get the proper verbiage of their full legal organizational name or full corporate name to add it on to the insurance. And then do they need to be added on with 30 days notice or not? Because again, we can customize the certificate for you. And these are just some of the basic things that they're asking for. And again, what are they asking for? Maybe they only need 2 million general liability. We have a 10 million liability policy here. We don't want to show all of our underwear if we don't need to. Right? If they only want to see 2 mil, we'll do the certificate for 2 million. Why? Do they need to know that we have 10 mil? Do you want them to sue you up to 10 mil? No. Let's not show our underwear. Like, we keep that private. Okay? We'll just keep it private. And you can send them to the district office and to myself, and we'll just we'll view it and make sure it's all kosher before we send it off to Markel. We don't want to get them unnecessarily excited over something that maybe the request is for something that's already automatically covered. And same thing here. So that's why we have this little certificate request form that you can fill out. And again, Shalina Banjé is your account executive. Here at Hub, we're salaried employees. We get paid a salary. And we want to do our best to service you and keep you as clients because we get paid on our salary, but we also get paid on customer service rates and ratings, and on retention of keeping your policy here as well. And you can reach out to, like I said, the office. You can reach out to me. I'm a Hub employee. I get a salary compensation, but I also know some intricate things that Rotary does and Rotarians do. And so I understand your business 100%. We do them too. We do what you guys do. And so happy to marry the policy coverages and the Rotarian activities. Are we covered? Are we not covered? And happy to help you out with those kinds of questions and issues. And again, if something does happen, you get served with a lawsuit, or you have a potential issue coming up, you do have the 1-800 toll-free with Markel that you can call confidentially. Obviously, go to the district first and say, hey, this is what happened. And then you have access, no deductible, up to $100,000 of free legal advice on anything that is insurance, could potentially be insurance related. They want to cover their butts and offer this service to you so that if something does come up, they can walk you through those steps before it blows out of proportion. I'm not going to give into too many details, but another district did get served for copyright infringement. And it was from a large club taking images off of the World Wide Web, copy and paste. And they were copyrighted. They didn't know they were copyrighted. It didn't say they were copyrighted. It was being used everywhere, but they copied and pasted a polio plus picture of a young African child getting drops. It looked like a legit Rotarian type of photo. Unfortunately, it was owned by a professional photographer. It wasn't, that image wasn't purchased. It wasn't paid for. And so there are companies out there. I won't say whether they're very scrupulous, because I don't think they are. And they go out there and they have bots. They use artificial intelligence and they use bots that scan the internet for images. And they see your image on your website. And then they scan it to see if it's owned by someone. If it is, they go to that artist, to that photographer, and say, hey, we found someone using your image copyrighted. So they negotiate a deal, $250 for the image, $250 for our bot services. We'll serve them with $500. Club thinks it's a scam, doesn't tell the district. They leave it for 3, 4, 5 months. Then they get served from a collection agency and also from a lawyer firm saying, well, now that image that you decided to ignore was going to cost you $250 to buy it, cost you $500 for the bot now, and now it's going to be $1,500 because we've got to pay the legal firm $1,000 for their time. So now they're dealing with $1,500 claims, a couple of them, but they fall under that $2,500 advertising injury threshold for the deductible on the insurance policy. So be risk aware, communicate with your clubs. Don't copy and paste images unless you're getting them off of the Rotary International Brand Center, which they have a SOCAN license and they've already paid for this stuff. Or get a Shutterstock, license if you want for $100 a year. It's up to you guys what you want to do, but be risk aware. Artificial intelligence is out there. Unscrupulous companies are out there. They're scanning the internet for stuff that you're doing and posting illegally, copyrighted. And so they are looking for stuff like that. So just be aware. But again, you could phone the 1-800 legal advice line and see what you could do there for assistance. And with that, I'm happy to have any other additional questions and answers.
Well, Jody, first off, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. It's almost been 1 hour. I know that Charlene has been fantastic and sent out all the documents and the policy to every single club. and you've addressed the questions that we've had tonight very, very well. And also, anybody that has any other pertinent questions or very anything really specific to their situation, you've got Jody's contact information. And also, I know that she'd be able to address those probably even in more detail. The other thing is that this entire session has been recorded. So for anyone that, because their schedules were full or whatever, haven't been able to join us tonight, this entire presentation tonight is also available for viewing for anybody that wasn't able to make it tonight. So just to be respectful of time, again, I want to thank everybody very much for taking your valuable time in joining us. And again, please, Jody, thank you so much. A virtual round of applause for you. And again, thank you so much for working with us. Frankly, the end result was that we had probably the appropriate amount of coverage, and there was no offense to the previous provider. They did a very good job. We just have an opportunity to work with someone that is very Rotary specific and get a very appropriate coverage, and with a 20% reduction to all the clubs. So it was a win-win-win, and I think it was a very good result. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to District Governor Kurt for any closing remarks he might want to have. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for taking their time out of this evening to come listen to the exciting news from our new insurance provider. And Jody, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to be with us here today. So thank you very much, and be a very informative session. And Vince, thank you for hosting and setting this up and working on looking at our insurance. So thank you very much for that, Vince. And with that, good night all.
Good night. Thank you very much. And a very special thank you to Charlene.
Oh, and Charlene. Yes, of course. Thank you, Charlene.
Okay. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Feel free to reach out if you need.